Warm greetings. Welcome to today's session on understanding the nuances of being women in architecture. The discussion on women in architecture is placed in the larger purview of being in the diverse fields of the built environment for those women who started their career with architecture education. The session is conducted with the support of Eco Development and Research Cell, a not-for-profit initiative of the Environmental Design Consultants, Ahmedabad. My name is Mansee Bal Bhargava, and I will be the host for the discussion. And I'm glad to start this conversation with women engaging in the practice and pedagogy of the built environment. The aim of the study is to celebrate the presence and participation of women in shaping the built environments. The objective is to understand and document the biographical journey of women from practice, research, education, activism, especially as I mentioned, for those who started from architecture background. Through this study, the intention is to acknowledge the contribution of women in the profession, bring forth the critical points that need to be addressed at individual, institutional, and collective level as what makes or breaks or tweaks a career of the woman architect in India. The study on women in architecture profession is a call for action to everyone in the profession and in the society to realize the need for equitable architectural practice in order to advance towards more equitable and sustainable even architecture and built environment. The study, importantly, is based on the presumption that the profession is highly patriarchal uh, and to add to it, male-dominated, I will say. The method applied for the study is called autoethnography, which in simple words means the life journey of a woman, and we are going to use our pen and other tools to document and disseminate their journey. Through the interaction, we wish to come up with YouTube series and a coffee table book, and therefore I also seek a permission for recording as well as transcribing this whole document. And for interaction today, we have Parul Kumtha, and I'm really looking forward to learning about her life journey. And before I invite you, Parul, I need to take a permission from you for recording as well as transcribing this interaction. I hope you're fine with it, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. In this conversation, as I mentioned, it's a woman in architecture. There is a small disclaimer here that the focus will be on the life journey of being woman, and where the architecture profession and the architecture per se is just going to be a part of discussion to complement the journey. And in here, we are trying to do a regular master class to understand what it is to be a woman in architecture. So before I invite you, a small brief introduction of yours. Parul Kumtha is a principal architect at Nature Nurture Architects and Planners. She is the founder and trustee of Forum for Autism in Mumbai and a trustee of Nagar Advocacy Governance Renewal at Greater Mumbai. She has expanded her experience and expertise in conservation of biodiversity at the Bombay Natural History Society and built heritage conservation. And she has done extensive studies with various regions, but importantly, to focus on here in the conversation, Mumbai metropolitan region heritage conservation. She works as a counselor at Umeed Child Development Center and Adult Support Kendra, focusing on mental well-being and development issues. So thank you so much, Parul. And if you are okay, I may just start with a question right away.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you back to some years when you were probably in high school, and what was going on in the family and among the friends, and how did you decide to join architecture? You may have to walk some years ago. Over to you.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks for having me here, Mansee. It's certainly a very exciting thing to be a part of this research of yours. And thank you for that. And yes, when you call back to my high school years, it's really very long ago. Yeah. And I need to say here that I had been fortunate to have changed 9 schools in my 10 years of learning.
Wow. So
And
you were traversing across the country.
yeah, and in various parts of the country, and through various, school boards. So there were some central school boards and some state school boards. and also through both co-ed and all girls settings. So yeah, that has been my formative school year experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came time to choose a field, in the after my 10th, I have always been, and my family has generally been very rational and scientific thinking. So I did know I didn't want to give up science. And the way academics is structured in our country, we have to choose. So I had chosen science to start with. But then when it came to choosing a profession further, I realized that I did not want to give up either science or arts. And I
Okay.
felt equally passionate about both. And which is, I would say, one of the main reasons why I opted for architecture, because it really seems to be one of the, or probably the only field in India that allows you to
Yes.
pursue both. And of course, I wasn't aware that there would be a large part of commerce also that would be
Yes.
part
A
of the
part of the
study of
game.
architecture. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is, if that answers your question, that was,
Yes, indeed.
yeah.
Indeed. So, I mean, when I'm asking every question, I'm always trying to look at that angle of girl or being woman. Was it really impacting certain decisions or certain things which you were carrying out? So, coming to your college days, early college days, and I know, I mean, in my time, we were majority in the classroom and toppers in the classroom. So, and teachers never made that discrimination between a girl student or a boy student. I would like to understand from you, how was it in your college and how was your experience about being a girl in this class and your other girlfriends also?
Yeah. So, firstly, in my time, and I have passed out of Sir J. J. College of Architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And in my time, there were fewer girls
Mm-hmm.
in
And
the
which year
profession.
is that, if I may ask, entry
Yeah.
or exit?
Yes. I graduated in 88.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it is not that long back.
That long, yeah,
Yeah.
because I entered 1990. So
Yes. So I mean, we are in a way
just
contemporaries.
immediate junior, immediate
Yeah.
junior.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Are you from JJ too?
no, no, I am from MSCT Bhopal. So
Okay.
it's
Okay.
now NIIT. Yeah.
Yes, yes, right. Yeah. So, well, even so, there were fewer girls in on
Mm-hmm.
campus and also in my class than
Mm-hmm.
boys. Uh, However, having said that, I think for persons who were involved with the profession and the study,
Huh.
there was really very little distinction made between the genders from what
Yes.
I remember. And
Mm-hmm.
we were encouraged to be equally curious and questioning. And
Yes.
I especially remember profs uh, who were open enough to say that they would think about the questions that we brought them if they did
Mm-hmm.
not know the answers immediately, and then come back
Huh.
to us with the
Huh.
answers. Right. So, yeah, so that in that sense, it was, I think, a very nice space to be in at that time.
Yes.
And also
So,
having so many male
mm-hmm.
classmates kind of helped look at the profession without the gender part playing a part, I
Mm-hmm.
feel, because you were
Mm-hmm.
kind of valued more for what you brought to the table in terms of
Yes.
discussions in class or design or whatever it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See, we are anyway in a patriarchal setup as a society, but family and other things. So I
Yeah.
would like to
Sorry,
understand from
Mansi,
you
I
when.
lost you for a bit. I lost you for a bit. So would you be able
Okay.
to?
Oh. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I will repeat. So I'm
Yeah.
saying in general, we are actually located in a patriarchal setup. We live in a patriarchal setup. And by the time we are graduating, there is not only pressure within ourselves. Uh, uh, there was already a pressure, usually from our house, also by that age. And at the same time, I'm sure you were also in your final year time and all. thinking what next, how to do, where to go, what will be the next phase of life and all. I would like to understand what was going on in your head in that time. And at the same time, when exactly did you really feel that being a woman in the profession is different? Or did you really not feel
Yeah.
it in the early career?
Yeah. So this is it's interesting you bring me back to this part of my life, and so when I was in the third or fourth year of architecture, and I have to say another reason I chose architecture as a field is because I come from a family which a large part of whom are connected to the medical profession. And it was always considered a very noble profession to be in. And I knew for certain I didn't want to be in that profession. So for me, what landed up happening was I looked at the three requirements for humankind: food, clothing, and shelter. And I thought shelter was a very important part of,
Yes.
what is required. And therefore, I need to also be an architect. But when I was in this, I think third year, you have these national conventions for the students of architecture. And that year was the year of the
Yes.
shelter for the homeless. It was the International Year
Okay.
of the Shelter for the Homeless, declared by the UN.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the
Mm.
GSEN trophy, as we are all aware of, which
Yes,
has to do
yes,
with
yes, yes.
design.
I was
And
jury this year actually.
okay. So at that time, the GSEN, which was the NASA was held in Chennai, today's Chennai,
Mhm.
then Madras,
Mhm.
and Indiana Malay University, and the group that
Mm.
put that together had made it a
Mm.
point to say it's not going to be a design-oriented trophy, but a
Mm.
research-oriented non-trophy. So there was not going to be
Okay.
an award, but you had to do research
Mm.
of the status of the homeless in your cities.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that kind of started my journey into
Mhm.
trying to look at what is the situation of shelter
Mhm.
in my own city and as well as in, across India. And
Mhm.
at that time, there was this organization called Bombay Collective,
Yes.
and uh, they were
It's still
doing,
there, no? Bombay Collective?
yeah, sorry, Lawyers Collective,
Uh-huh.
and it
There
was
is
held.
Bombay Collective
Yeah,
also.
there's a
Huh?
Bombay Collective too. That there's Lawyers Collective, and
Mm.
they were fighting a case for some hutments that were removed from Senapati Bapat Marg, and this case had
Mm.
gone up to the Supreme Court, and I read about it in the papers. So I thought, for the research, I need to go and find out what this is all about. And so I had gone, and the lawyer Indira Jaisingh, who later went on to,
Yeah, wow.
yeah, she was heading, I mean, she's such a
Yes.
well-known figure now, but she
Yes.
was head, and that
One
time
of
too,
my
she was a
inspiration
very
too. Mm.
strident and important woman figure in my life, if you may say
Yes.
that.
Mm.
So I would go there because as a third year right, I was put in charge of the
Uh-huh.
GSEN, the GSEN troop. And being a little research oriented myself, everybody thought I would be the right fit for that. So I would go every day into her office, and I
Mm-hmm.
would want to talk to her about it. She obviously did not have time for me, and I'm sure she doesn't even remember me. I was just one student then.
Yes.
But ultimately, I did get through to her, and she asked me to go and see what the transit camps are like. And so I had
Mm-hmm.
gone to this transit camp where everybody had been moved from Senapati Bapat Marg, because she was fighting the case saying that you are coming in the way of the right to livelihood, and therefore
Yes.
life, which is a
It's not
fundamental
only
right.
relocation, displacement.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And then when I went there, I saw that, it was a hillside. Firstly, Dindoshi was not what it is today. So,
Mm.
I was standing at this bus stop, and then a bus which was supposed to come every 20 minutes came after 40 minutes. And, the whole thing, I went to the last stop, walked for another mile, then went to the transit camp area in the middle of May with the monsoons looming. And there's this hillside, and, dust by dust chalk outlines were drawn on it. And that was their relocation. And over here, the squad demolition squad had just crushed their belongings altogether,
Mm.
and people were there with putleys and buckets and all of that.
Mhm.
And I met this young widow who must have been in her 20s or at most 30, with
Wow.
3 young children, school-going children, of whom the elder 2 were young girls. And her thus by thus chalk outline was over a dry well.
Oh.
So, and she was working as a maid back where she was.
Mm.
So immediately the fight that was happening in the courts made sense to me,
Yes.
and I started looking at architecture a little differently, not
Mm.
just as, what we do in our studios, but it's affecting the lives directly of so many
Yes.
people and
Our
decisions.
drawings actually. Mm.
Yes, and also when I had set out to say shelter is an important part of
Mm.
a human's being, it kind of
Mm.
stared me in the face. So somewhere around that time, I actually started veering away from the proper profession of architecture and started
Mhm.
looking more at doing something that was socially relevant,
Mhm.
joining up actually even with women's groups and other such,
Mm.
yeah. So by the time I was out of college, I was not looking at architecture as the purpose of my life, but more
Mhm.
as a means of paying my bills, if I may put
Yes,
it.
yeah, as a tool to really do what I wish to
Yes,
do. I mean,
yes,
I
yeah,
can so much relate with it. I mean, that architecture is just a tool to attain your purpose of life, to be honest. Let me go to the next question, which is about when we are talking about purpose of life, and you were already talking about a very crucial life-changing moment when you met these people there, this woman with children there. How was your early career from there, and what went on in the early, let's say few years, and how were you really managing your, let's say, career as well as your work-life balance? I mean, because I mean, even till date, architecture profession in the first few years is really difficult.
yeah. So
And
firstly,
did
like
it
I
make a difference being a woman? So did it make a
yeah.
difference being a woman?
So well, yes and no.
Yes.
Yeah. Because like I was saying earlier, I had uh, become associated with a lot of women's groups, and it was
Mm-hmm.
like the ebbing time of the whole feminist movement in India,
Yes.
and a lot was happening,
Yes.
and so therefore it really stared me in the face that I come from a place of privilege,
Yes.
even as a
Absolutely.
woman in a
Mm.
male dominated profession, largely male dominated profession. Even so, I come from a place of privilege. And I
Yes.
was interacting with women, with leading very ordinary, extraordinary lives in ordinary circumstances, who were,
Mm.
probably having very rudimentary education and
Mm.
extremely difficult economic situations, and also dealing with so many other harsher realities of the lack of
Yes.
privilege and patriarchy.
Mm.
So I did not really have the time or the space to look at the shortcomings that came to me in the profession,
Mm-hmm.
because what I was
Yeah, you
seeing,
had bigger purpose to really look
yeah,
at,
and
and it was
correct, and
overwhelming, I guess, very overwhelming.
yes, overwhelming and also humbling, very humbling,
Mm.
because you kind of realize that
Mm.
your complaints are really very tiny as compared to
Yeah, very trivial to be
problems.
honest.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm. So that is very interesting to understand. I would still like to understand how was your early career in terms of, family, work, and also then I will say this is an extended family when you work for them. So
yeah,
how as an early career woman, how was it to manage all of them? Because there are also requirements and emotional demands from the family, even if they don't say
right,
anything, there are.
right, yeah. So yes, of course there were, and I stayed in a joint family. I mean, I stayed with my
Mm-hmm.
in-laws.
Mm.
So certainly there were the typical expectations that are
Yes,
there, right? Uh, Perhaps others had it worse than I did, and I
I'm
really
sure.
had a
Mm.
more understanding, and more than understanding. I mean, I had 3 older sisters-in-law, and all of them were working persons. Okay,
Okay, that makes it
so
easier also for
yes,
you.
yeah, right.
For
And
family to understand you in
correct.
a
I
way.
understand in the sense it's a way of life. It's a
And
way
yes,
of
and
life.
Mumbai also is different in these things. Being
Yeah,
woman and working woman in Mumbai is
right.
completely part of the culture there,
Correct.
accepted culture.
Correct. And also on my side, in my home, from my mother's side, I'm third generation working woman.
Okay.
Right.
So
So
you
my
grew up seeing that woman works.
yes. So it was nothing unusual,
Unusual.
and as a result, there was also this thing that although there would be the whole expectation and division of labor thing, which is natural, in the whole home environment, there were no very clear demarcations of what is the job that is to be done by the woman
Roles.
and what's to be done by the man, and both
Mm,
in my own home and also the home into which I was married. So
mm.
that made a difference.
It was a natural transition to new family.
Sort of, you would say,
You
you
mentioned.
could say
Yeah.
that, you could say
Mm.
that. But of course, there were expectations that would
Yes.
be
Yes.
there,
Yeah.
right? And actually, I would say the expectations were more among the women I interacted with outside of the home.
Yeah. Because they
You
were
know,
looking for some hope, through you. So I can
I don't know whether
imagine
they're
that.
looking for hope, but they were the scrutiny was much higher there, right?
Mhm. Will you
Uh,
deliver? Will whatever promised? Was it like that?
it was not just that, even it could be as simple as your attire.
Mm.
Like, are you wearing your Mangal Sutra? Do you have green bangles on?
Oh, that's interesting.
If you're sitting in a
So you're
meeting till
part of them or not, then only you will understand
yeah,
them, something
correct,
like this.
correct.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're sitting here till 9 in the night, then who's cooking dinner at home?
Yes,
You
they
know,
must be concerned.
these were questions that I got from the persons that I was actually, I
Interesting.
I would say it's not like I was helping them, they were helping me to really understand
Yes.
life.
Yes.
And it really opened my eyes up to these things that we take so much for granted. So, yes,
Mm-hmm.
and so I started off doing very small projects. Like I said, it was not the focus of my profession,
Yes. Mm.
right? I mean, I didn't want to have a career at that point in architecture, but I
Mm.
did go into teaching. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the reasons for that, I was a visiting lecturer with some colleges in the beginning. One
Mm-hmm.
of the reasons for that was I felt during my studies
Mm.
that, especially with this whole thing happening
Mm-hmm.
with, the court case of the Lawyers
Mm-hmm.
Collective, and, that international year of the shelter for uh, of the homeless and all of that I spoke about earlier.
Mm.
Uh, I started realizing that our academic uh, syllabus does not extend to include all this.
No, it doesn't address these things. Yes.
Yeah. So
Mm.
we had, some of us had even come together and put out an open letter to
Mm.
persons in academia, and
Mm.
which we had also sent to the council at that point.
Mm. Mm.
Asking that these things change, and like asking for a dialogue on this. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really felt I needed to be in academics and at least
Mm.
be the change I want to see a
Yes.
little bit, right? Whatever
Yeah,
is possible.
I'm fighting a similar battle for water. That
Yeah,
water should be taught in architecture more than
right,
riverfront and lakefront development.
right.
And it's not easy. Mm.
Yeah. So basically, to be able to go beyond the studio and look at
Yes.
life,
Mm.
right?
Very
And
interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
So let me just take this point further and ask you some, because you were doing this, I will use the word offbeat, not the conventional architecture profession as we were trained. So that, unfortunately, even till date, I see when I am also engaging with many colleges, I see we are still, the pedagogy is focusing on architecture for the classes and not for the masses.
mm,
Apart from that one urban design, studio where you go into the scale, where you look at people at large in the society, not particularly the poor people, but depending on the site. So, because it was an unconventional way to start a career, were you aware of some of the other greats who were really working in this area? in the from the profession? I mean, of course, you already mentioned Indira Jaising, but
Yeah.
did you get in touch with them? How to take this kind of career further? What was it? I mean, how were you seeing your career? I mean, you already mentioned that career was not really a kind of a priority for you because of the situation which you were looking
Yeah.
at. But still, there must be more people who have influenced you through the professional approach, because someone has to really understand how to deal with the situation. Or
Yeah.
probably you may have also realized that you may not be able to solve all the problems, but do your bit. But would you like to talk about some of your, influencers or mentors? I may use the word influencer is nowadays quite skewed. So let me just use the word mentor.
Yeah. Well, there is a person that stands out to me, and that is architect Neera Adarkar.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have not ever been directly taught by her, or
Mm-hmm.
have not even really directly worked with her, but
Mm-hmm.
she's a person who you know is clear. I could see was clearly
Mm-hmm.
aware of and grappling with things that
Mm-hmm.
I too found myself grappling with.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, she has a very thriving professional practice also. I mean, she's a very
Mm-hmm.
well-renowned person as an architect also, in
Mm-hmm.
addition to what she does. So that
Mm-hmm.
really, that if I have to mention one woman from the profession that stood
It
out for
can
me.
be anybody, not women only. So
Yeah,
see, people who influence your work, the way you approach things and all.
yeah. So again, like I said, many times it was just most simple people, but the one main thing, the main change that came about, I would say, and that happened even before I actually uh, became this person, the mother of this young man who's a young man now. Uh, during my dissertation, had tried to explore something called non-visual architecture.
Mm-hmm.
That was the theme that I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to research on. And one of the reasons I felt that I need to do this, because I felt in the 5 years that I studied, there was a lot of stress laid on aesthetics and the visualness
And
of
physical,
things.
yes.
Yeah, and almost kind of,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to remember this, I must have been 20, 21 years old. So,
Yes.
with all the limitations of
Yeah.
the thought processes at that age. But I really did feel that one has to look at beyond the visual. And I
Yes.
kept trying to understand how to do that. And I had
Mm-hmm.
put down some questionnaires which I would take to people. And I realized people struggle to talk
Mm-hmm.
about spaces in a non-visual way. And at that
Yes.
time, I actually, by chance, because JJ is back to back with St. Xavier's College,
Mm-hmm.
I interacted with Dr. Sam Taraporwala, who retired a year or two back as head of Department of Sociology in St. Xavier's
Mm-hmm.
College. And he was at that time a student there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
he's a visually impaired person.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I realized that through him, I realized, and through interactions with him, that persons who are visually impaired were able to understand what I was doing, right? And like answer my questions and my queries and give me insights. But one of the interesting things he said at that time, and this you have to remember was even before the ADA, that is the American Disability Act. Okay, and much before the UNCRPD, United Nations Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disability,
Mm-hmm.
way before that. And he said, because I was looking at the limitations of my design output, so I had a site and, I was looking. So he said that, if you design things perfectly for us within one space, you're actually crippling us
Yes.
because I need to deal with the world. I don't want to be confined to a space.
And a perfect space for that matter.
Yeah. So, because these are his words, actually loosely quoted. He said, I
Yes.
will stumble on the first threshold I encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you don't have any obstacles in my way within your space that is designed, or go ahead and design the whole world to become obstacle-less. And that
Mm-hmm.
got me
How deep
thinking.
that is, huh?
Yeah, that got me again thinking, but of course, it was in the back seat. But then it kind of kept kept pushing my thought process. And then although I was not intending to be an architect professionally, I did set up a practice, and I have worked with universal design, not just in auditing and giving interventions, retrofitting to spaces, but actually designing, architectural, like proper architectural spaces, like, bungalows and what have you. And frankly, I've done more professionally than I've expected to do. But, it happened like that. And a lot of my clients have been persons who would qualify as persons with disability. Persons who are quadriplegic, paraplegic, visually impaired, hearing impaired, persons with cerebral palsy, persons from other marginalizations and intersectionalities, like, I worked in Chhattisgarh to create modules for, in the tribal villages, to create modules for different disabilities under the Swachh Bharat mission. And so these things just started evolving over time, and but in the meantime, I had also become a mother to a young, to a lovely young boy, and he then later went on to have a diagnosis of autism. So through him, I also learned a lot about invisible disabilities and invisible marginalizations, of which gender is also a part.
Absolutely. There's a lot of attention now, but I'm sure not 20 years ago.
Yes. So that kind of got me to start looking at design again in a very different way, and again looking at intersectionalities very closely. So that's how it started. Of course, now I am empaneled with the Government of India as an accessibility auditor. And have been doing a lot of work, in that sphere.
So, over these years, you may have worked with many people, of course, diverse gender, diverse age group, and all. When you work on the field, and when you are difference in the way people respond to being women, I mean, this question may sound a bit, timeless, but I'm sure you also realize the way when you started your career and where you are today, of course, the treatment is going to be different. But still, some overview and what has changed, the way people look at you or look up to you when you started and when you are today. I mean, the gender component of it. Were they always listening? Good listeners to you, because many women also face this issue in their early career.
So I think because of how my experiences before I went into the profession, while I was still a student, I came at it as a listener rather than a speaker. So when I have worked with teams, it has always been like, if I'm talking to my contractor, I would say, can it be done this way, or do you have some other suggestion? मुझे ऐसे करना है, क्या ये हो सकता है? Or so it's always a collaborative way of looking at it, because I have seen the lives of the persons quite closely. Really not as closely as they should be seen. I would still see from a very distant way, but I do know them to be very knowledgeable about what they do. So, even if it's a person who is even a woman who's carrying stones, on her side, I would want to know from her what could be done differently. Like, should we be piling them here, or should we be piling them there, or what could work better?
Take one by one.
So therefore I have ऐसे खटके कभी नहीं गए हैं, like by and large, right? Because persons have found it okay to be able to share their insights and their knowledge. So even in my office space, we had this long table, about 12 foot long table, and we all sat around it.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no hierarchy. There was no person sitting in a cabin. I was not sitting in a cabin as a principal architect, and everybody just sat around it. And we've always had this policy and continue to have it that even if you're a fresh intern in the team, your thought processes matter, your ideas matter, your opinion matters,
Yes.
and your critical appraisal matters.
Mm.
So, and then they see young persons questioning me about, my decisions, and they feel emboldened to be able to do that. Whether
Absolutely,
they're
yes.
whether they are, whatever gender they belong to. And I'm avoiding using male and female as binaries here.
Yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is also something that I have learned from the young persons who joined
Mm-hmm.
my team over time,
Mm.
and gender is also now no longer a binary concept. It's a continuum, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah. And nowhere can it be seen more clearly, I think, than in architecture. And here I would like to share something that my younger sister had said to me when we were still
Mm-hmm.
in college. She was doing applied sociology, and
Uh-huh.
so she came to me from that angle. And she said, Parul, you and your friends somehow come across as androgynous, your
That's
whole
interesting.
architecture gang, right? And it
Uh-huh.
really got me thinking, because
Mhm.
architecture is such a thing that you need to be connected to the finer, more, if you
Yes.
must say, feminine things
Yes.
like aesthetics, but you also need to be connected to construction and, uh,
Yes.
you know, it's,
You need to
so
have that bit metal of masculinity. That's
yeah.
true. So
So these
true.
two domains merge, and I think that kind of also develops a more androgynous way of thinking
Yes.
and existing.
Yeah, that's very nice way to put things as also, and I think I so much agree with you on this very idea that actually the other way of looking at it, we inherit masculinity and femininity both in this profession, and that is required also by the profession, and we can call it actually closer to gender blind or gender neutral for that matter. Having said that, there are still different ways women performs or men perform. So, from your experience, I would like to understand the design approach which men will take in the kind of projects which you are doing, of course, and the design approach difference as women will take, and also the business approach as you were mentioning in the beginning, and I really liked it that there's a bit of commerce also, but apart from arts and science.
Yeah.
What is the difference you have identified, or you realize that men and women are doing differently both in design as well as in managing the business of profession or architecture, let me put it
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I would say, if you must look at it in binary, I would
Yes.
say a person who is more male in the way they
Uh,
approach, uh, would, if they are really successful,
mm-hmm.
would be able to do the shift towards being more collaborative, the
Uh-huh.
successful ones.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, the women who are more successful would be able to look at the finances in a
Mm-hmm.
more structured way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for both to really be one of the things that architecture requires, and I think all of us do it so naturally that we don't realize it,
Mm-hmm.
is it requires you to be multifaceted, and
Yes.
also what's it called? Be a lateral thinker and also
Yes, it's requirement
multitask.
of the profession. We don't
Yeah.
have choice. It's
We
requirement
don't
of
have
the
a
profession.
choice. Yeah. And multitasking. Multitasking
Yes.
is such an important thing. So, like for me, I have this wall calendar and I write things on it. And then I have a pad here and I'll have things on it. And I'll have my calendar on my phone. And then I'll have pop ups happening everywhere. And, but I'll also have a shopping list and of
Uh-huh.
groceries. And so it's just one more multitask that one does, you know
Mm-hmm.
so I think persons who are good at who have
Mm-hmm.
made it in the profession
Mm-hmm.
would be able to firstly multitask, be lateral
Mm-hmm.
thinkers, and multifaceted, but the men would be able to be collaborative and the women would be able to be strategic.
Very interestingly put,
That's
by the way. Uh,
yeah.
So let me just move on to the next question here and understand from you when you work with other junior and peer group women, do you see the kind of physical and psychological aspects they carry more as a baggage than actually they are there, or do these barriers actually exist? What is your take on
Yeah.
that?
So I think if you work with women, those
Mm,
barriers start chipping off, one by
mm,
one. So I remembered as you were speaking, I remembered there was this young intern who had joined me, and
mm,
uh, you know, she was quite thrilled because we were working on this architectural project from literally, the line off had been done. So literally from the foundations up, she's going to see this
mm,
happening, right? So she was
mm,
very excited about it, but it was in the back of Beyond, and you had to catch a train and go till that
uh-huh,
place, and then from there you had to go by road, and you reach that point where there was nothing. There was not a
mm,
tree or not, anything. And then you had the local construction teams come there because, as we know, when you're working in these remote areas, it's very important to employ the local persons also and have them feel involved in the project, for it to really be a
yes.
success. So they were there, and it was largely male. And so it was a little upsetting. Uh, Not really for her, I think, but for her mother. And an interesting thing happened was that her mother came to meet me at the office and say that, you're sending my young girl to that site and there are all men there, you know.
Mm,
And, well, we had a frank talk about it. And her mother was basically a person who working person, but she worked in an office.
mm,
So she had a nine to
mm,
five job, and very structured and safe, right? Indoors,
mm,
right? So, she said, my daughter's just graduated and I made her some gold earrings and a gold chain, and, she goes wearing this. And basically, my senior architect who was sitting there around our big table, she just
mm.
pointed to the two of us and said, well, we don't wear any gold when we go to site. If you're so worried, if you're
Of
so
course.
worried, you just don't do it, right? So,
Even makeups and all are out of the profession somehow.
yeah. So, it was just said, or even when this young girl, another young girl, when we were going to a site and we got down at the station and we were heading, suddenly asked me this question saying, will there be a toilet on site? Well, there's nothing
Mm.
built there, right? So there was no question of a toilet being there.
Anyway, it's still the problem for a female architect in
Correct,
most of the
correct,
sites.
correct. And if you're building from scratch, there's really nothing there,
There's
right?
no choice.
Yeah. It was on a hillock. And
Mhm.
I said, why? Why do you ask that? So she said, because I have my periods. So to which,
Mm.
without, we were all walking on the platform. And, my senior architect and I both chorused. We didn't know, but we both
Mm.
chorused at her and chorused, oh, so do we. Okay.
Mm.
Right. So for her, I think it was a assuring thing that,
That you can still continue. Yeah, but it's
yes,
a serious physical problem,
it's a
actually,
problem.
on this.
It's actually a problem. But she had with her persons who knew how to deal with it.
Yes, so she's more confident on, okay,
Yes,
I'm not the
yes,
only one. I'm not the only
correct,
vulnerable one. It
correct.
makes a
Yeah,
difference. Yes.
yeah,
That slowly also becomes our role as mentors, over the years when we grow older.
yeah,
It is a role which we naturally slip into as a mentor for younger people, how to
yeah,
deal with these
yeah,
situations. Yeah.
yeah.
So if I may ask you a tricky question here, with your years of experience and also from experience of your acquaintances, your fellow women architects and all, do you think it really makes a difference to have a spouse from the same profession? Yes or no? And if both ways, how? It's a tricky
So,
question.
it's an interesting question because it's funny you asked me this. So sometimes I have been called onto a project in
Mhm,
my own right, because I
mhm,
bring
mhm,
something to the profession. And when I'm being introduced to my male colleagues who are also on that project because of what they bring to it, literally the second or third question that they ask me is your husband an architect too? Right?
It's
And
a
I
natural
always,
question which comes.
but it's interesting that that's the natural question,
Yes,
right?
I mean, for society, it's a natural question. If you are successful, then which means that you are supported by someone.
So I
I
always find
face this
myself,
question differently.
yeah, no, so I always find myself answering this question from male colleagues who are on a project
Mm-hmm.
because we all bring something to it. I answer the question by saying, no, is your
Mm-hmm.
wife one?
Wow. I like it. I'm going to share what I do in those situations.
Yeah.
Very
So,
interesting.
because, and then they are like a little stumped.
Mm.
They probably think in their head, oh, she's that kind of woman. I don't know what
So
they think in their head.
the badass broad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, I read that book, Badass Broad, which documented the most influential woman of last 100 years, and
Yeah.
that was the kind of beginning of writing this research proposal. And yes, we have been quite vocal actually for many of us in the profession. And many a times, even men are not, not expecting that we will be so naturally vocal. It's not that we respond by resistance. It's like by bringing a sense of
Yeah.
humor
Yeah.
and just asking naturally.
Yeah.
I do recall many a times people say, because I have also deviated from mainstream architecture and do a lot of things and a lot of traveling here and there. Many a times friends and families are always saying, oh, you can do all this la 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 because there's somebody to take care of your expenses. And I'm like, yes, excuse me, sorry, I pay my own bills, and I'm also paid for traveling and doing all these things here and there. But it is just not, it's not accepted in their head that you can enjoy life in your own terms. And when I'm saying enjoying, it's not that traveling is only enjoying. You are going for work. It's not, I'm not holidaying every time. But this kind of questions and responses comes from family and friends very naturally, just like you mentioned. And I think we have to fix it. I mean, and I see these are part of patriarchy. I mean, there is no patriarchy has not a very explicit horns. I mean, they come in this form. So, anyway, let me ask you a very simple question here. Some life-changing moments. I mean, I do remember the one which you said from GCN Trophy, but I'm sure you must have made a few more life-changing moments which have made you what you are today. You are one of the most respected architects in the city, and of course in our fraternity, as especially as women. And that's why I was after your life for so much time to get you on board in
No,
this
thank you for that. I'm
interaction.
flattered. I don't know if I deserve that, but thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
you do, you do, you do, and I'm thankful to, the previous respondents who, I mean, few of them who have recommended your name. Yeah, I didn't know you personally, and this is through these interactions, I'm getting to know such wonderful women, and that's my biggest achievement. I will be very honest on that.
Thank you.
So I'm
Thank you.
sure many of us who have had situations in life and we took some drastic decisions or strong decisions, which made us what we are today. And it's not about failing or successing, through it or sailing through it. But it changed our life, the way we look at things. It changed the way we are today. So if you don't mind, if you would like to share some of those decisions that you made.
Yes. So one of the big things that happened in my life, and I think it is a pretty unique thing to happen in anybody's life, is
Mhm.
when my son was 3.5 years old, he had a
Mhm.
40-foot fall. And
Oh,
yeah,
छत से गिर गए.
छत से नहीं गिरे. He fell out of a premises due to their negligence, and I
Oh,
wouldn't want to go
school.
through that.
No,
Yeah,
should,
but
yeah.
anyway, yeah, he had the fall, and after which he was pretty seriously injured in the
I can
process.
imagine. Mm.
Yeah, and he was in hospital. He was in coma for over 10 days, had very high temperature, had broken almost every bone, and He was in the hospital for 2 months, and even when he came home, he was still being fed with a Riles tube. And frankly, for both of us parents, for me as well as my partner, it was a struggle to, just have him take the next step towards getting better.
Yes.
And also literally take the next step. I mean, he learned everything from
Yes.
scratch, right from holding his head, to sitting up, and then to crawling, to standing, to everything. Today he is tall. He's tall. We are all tall. He's 6'4", almost 6'5", and he's a good swimmer, and all of that. It's had its impact on
Wow.
him. The accident has left its impact on him.
Mm.
But actually, the thing is that through him, I got to know of so many of these persons who I have said, so many of them are also my
Yes.
clients.
Mm.
Many of them are also self-advocates, and I've had made many changes,
Mm.
in the way we look at, generally, we look at life and spaces, and certainly architecture, also how we look at law and regulations, and, all of that. And I would forever be thankful to the insights that my son in particular has brought to my life, and has really changed me in many ways. You are frozen. So did you hear me in the last bit? You were frozen for a bit. So,
I did hear you. I did hear
okay.
you.
All
I'm
right.
hearing you.
Yeah. So, and it kind of led me to also understand, because I was already interacting with different
Yes.
marginalizations, and then I've seen this up close, and it made me realize that architecture in particular is something that really takes away a lot, like takes from the
Mm-hmm.
environment. Anything you do at all as an architect affects the balance of ecology, right? So I don't know, you're frozen again. So I'm wondering, uh,
Yes.
hello, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you.
Oh,
I hear you.
all right.
I'm hearing
Okay,
you
okay. Because if
continuously.
getting frozen
Go
in the
ahead.
middle, so I'm wondering, yeah. So, it
Yes.
takes
No
away
issues.
from the ecology, and it leaves
Mm.
an impact. And,
Yes.
and so I started realizing that if this needs to be done as an architect, and I have to tell you,
Mhm.
I have been quite a mainstream architect too. Although I may have started my career, on a parallel, but I have
Yes.
very much come back to mainstream, and I have done a lot of mainstream architecture and continue to do it.
Mm.
But I realized that one has to be very cognizant of this, and therefore ensure that anything you do as an architect should be available to as many people as possible. It should not be restricted by use to a small number of persons. So I look at that as the foundation of my understanding of what is popularly called universal design.
Mm.
Yeah, I yeah, I think
There was a trip from my end. I'm so sorry because
no
it's
worries.
bad wind here now.
Yeah, yeah, no
I
problem.
this yeah.
Yeah.
We will
So
edit.
correct. So, like what I was saying is, because when one realizes that you're taking away from ecology and making an impact
Mm.
on, you're changing things forever in the
Forever.
environment.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's so important then that that space be available to as many persons as possible.
Yes.
and in as best a way as possible. And that
Mhm.
has kind of created the basis of my understanding of what is
Yes.
popularly known as universal design.
Universal design, yes. I mean, ironically, the whole architectural pedagogy homogenizes human beings, like it's for all normal people.
Yeah.
In the sense, I mean, I really feel embarrassed to call normal as normal people, but some people that who do not have any problems. And I do remember when you were talking about your inspiration in the previous questions, and you did mention that we don't need to have perfect place. In this imperfect world, we can actually go for or look for or design for imperfect spaces and places. So very well put. I reach to my penultimate question here, and it's a very weird question, I must say, and it's a hypothetical question. And not that I believe that to happen, but still I must pose this question. So the question is, imagine a situation that the country has more female architects, more women architects than male, more successful women architects. What will the cities, neighborhoods, and buildings look like? Will they be different, or will they be very similar as we are today? And today we are in a very big mess which we have created. I asked this question and I must defend this question before you respond to me. Honestly speaking, I would not like that day to arrive. I would like a day when we don't need to discuss gender. I would like to have a very equitable profession. But at this moment, when I do research from a hawk eye and both the eyes and worm's eyes, I do see that the profession is highly patriarchal or masculine, in other words. So it's like, marks, school mein, college mein, when you aim for 100 marks, you get 80 or 70. So that is why this question is posed, that if there is that situation, maybe from small efforts like I am doing, many other people are doing, maybe we will move a stone towards reaching an equitable profession.
Mm.
So that's the 100% marks when all women are architects in this country, or all predominantly architecture profession is led by women. Main well-known architects are women architects. Your response to this? You may laugh it out as well,
No,
but
no,
I
no.
I see your.
It's a very important question. It only raises other questions in my head. And for before going into that, I want to say I'm the most perfectly designed spaces are the ones that are most inclusive. I wouldn't call them imperfect spaces. They
Mhm.
are the most perfect spaces, right?
Yes.
Now, when you're looking at if there are more women, there are some
Mm.
questions that come to my mind.
Mm.
Firstly, like I said, today gender is being looked at as a continuum, right?
Yes.
So that
Uh,
is one thing. The other thing is women from where? Are
mm.
these women from the disability background? Are they from
There are more
the other
intersectional.
marginalized, their caste backgrounds,
Mhm.
economically marginalized backgrounds, culturally marginalized backgrounds, whether they are more rural, whether they are more urban, whether they are
Mhm.
first, second, third generation working persons, or where do they stand? What are their
Mhm.
family situations? Are they mothers? Are they not mothers? If they are mothers, are they mothers to persons with special needs or not? Or, so there are so many other factors, right? That
Yes, indeed.
fine.
Mm.
So woman is not a unidimensional
Absolutely.
definition.
It's not a homogeneous entity.
Right.
Agreed upon.
Right,
Mm.
right. So my answer to that is we need representation from all marginalizations in
Mm.
order for anything to really change in society, whether
Mhm.
it's to do with architecture or with anything else.
Yeah, yeah. It applies to many fields, because let me also share with you at this point in time that I'm carrying out another research on women for water. And I'm looking at professional women. So I'm deliberately not calling in women in water. I'm looking at water professionals who are actually contributing to bringing some change or solving water problems. So it's the professional women who may be impacting more lives. It's not
Yeah,
women lives, but the societies.
yeah.
Uh, in there
I
also
just
this
want to say
question comes.
here, I
Please
are
continue.
you yeah, are you aware of the Pani Foundation? You would be, I
Yes,
suppose.
yes, I'm aware of it. I'm
Yeah, and
aware of it.
yes, I
I
know
have
one of the
written to them
persons.
few times, but
Okay.
there is no response coming from
Oh,
them. But if you know
okay.
some people out there, please help me to reach out to them.
Because
We run
they
the
have a
longest
lot of
water
women
conversation.
teams. they have a
Yes,
lot of
we run
living
the
things.
longest water conversation
Correct.
in the world, by the way.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
I just got in touch with Dr. Paul, so I hope he is going to now interact with us. We have the
Yeah.
longest water conversation in the world, so
I'm sure they
that's
must be
another thing.
busy with something and we'll get back to
Yes, yes,
you.
I
No
met
worries.
Dr. Paul recently in Ahmedabad, so now he has promised he will
Okay.
interact with us. Hopefully.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
did write to him a few times.
Yeah. 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 Sorry, you were saying something.
No.
I
So we
interrupted.
come back. No, I was just relating it with my work on water as well, and talking about not because in water as well, it's highly patriarchal, and whereas we put women in the vulnerable side, thinking that the society is obliging by giving water services to women, as if the woman is going to drink and do everything with the water, and rest of the people will not. They are not compared in built environment, but they are also, I'm asking similar questions. If more water decisions or water leaders are women, will it make a difference in the way we manage water? And this is where I am also keen to understand what kind of physical differences. And I completely got your point on intersectionality within the gender as well. And you also mentioned very rightly so that when we look at other women, actually we are privileged. I'm completely agreeing on that. But let us take it in a very simple manner. When we see, even as of today, there are equal number of boys and girls graduating from the schools, architecture schools. But when you look at the proportion of those who teach and those who practice, there's a serious skewedness in gender, huh? So both ways it is problematic, but let's say if there are more women practicing and who are really impacting the built environment indirectly, what kind of changes we will be actually expecting from, or no changes as well. I mean, I know in the past there have been very wonderful discussion on this question because it gets to the nerves.
Yeah.
And it also questions the way we are building cities and communities today.
Yeah.
In your case, like talking about universal design,
Yeah.
inclusivity, uh, and I mean, if it was not Parul, if it was somebody else, I'm sure that somebody else would have also approached the project in the very similar way the projects are done by Parul because of the life-changing experience Parul had in her early
Yeah.
career. So
Yeah.
gender does not
Sure.
come in there.
Yeah.
But still, as a researcher, I'm looking at a pattern. But when you are looking at your projects and when we are discussing your life, it may not look that coarse. But when I look at a larger canvas,
Yes.
there are situations and patterns, and that's why
Yeah.
it becomes extremely important to capture some of the nuances.
Yeah.
Cities will look like this, neighborhoods will look like this, or buildings will look like this, or
Yeah.
different, or
Yes.
maybe not. Yeah.
Yes. So here is one interesting thing that has happened to all of us, the whole
Hmm.
world, in fact, in the last, half decade after
Mhm.
the whole pandemic, right?
Yes.
So the
Yes.
whole something that women have always struggled for,
Mm.
flexibility in work
Yes.
situations
Yes.
and work hours, and
Mm.
looking at your productivity not in terms of your presence,
Mhm.
but based on your ability to bring to the table what is required, not in your
Yes.
physical presence, right?
Yes.
So, and we can see that because of the pandemic, this
Mm.
the work from home situations that
Mhm.
have become quite the norm now,
Yes.
right? And in fact, I also use the word normal actually as
Yes.
meaning average,
Yes.
standard, right?
Yes.
We are all normal because we're standard. We are not out of the
Yeah.
standard. We are not
Yes.
unique,
No, we are
you
not
know?
unique. If we are not
Yes,
different. Yes.
yes.
I
But now,
also mean the same. Hmm.
yeah. And now, interestingly, because of the whole pandemic situation,
Mm-hmm.
in a way, the whole work style has changed,
Yes.
right? And it is more conducive to persons with young families,
Mm.
both male and female, because even
Yes.
fathers can now be more hands-on because of
Yes.
this,
Yes. You
right?
did. Yes.
Yeah.
They have
Personally,
learned finally,
yes.
most of them.
Yeah. So personally, for me, my team now functions like this. We have to go on site, but you don't have to come to office if you don't
Mhm.
need to,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Because there's
Wow,
no
that's
point in
nice.
Yeah, you don't need, why spend time traveling? And
Mm.
today my team is in various parts of India. We are not
Mhm.
even at one place. So I'm in
And so you
Pune, but
operate very similar to me, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah, right.
And
And
I'm mobile, and it gives me more flexibility as
correct,
well.
correct, yeah. So these changes have happened now because of the pandemic, but
Mm.
also because there was a large part of, women workforce was so large in the world,
Mm. Mm.
right? That in a way it had to. In fact, what we're doing now, Zoom, right,
Mm.
is
Absolutely.
thanks to the
In fact,
pandemic,
even many buildings are also addressing this co-working spaces,
right?
flexible working spaces, and cafes
Hybrid
have become
working,
hotspots. I mean,
correct,
I do a lot of meetings in cafes because I also need change.
right,
In fact, in my case, I actually stopped going to office some years before Corona in from 2017, to be honest. I just didn't want to waste 3 hours. I mean,
yeah,
going 1 hour, coming 1 hour, and then getting ready and all. And I could realize that I can use those 3 hours, sorry, both ways. I mean, including everything, getting ready. And I can play with my street dogs, which I love to do. I can just dance, sing,
yeah,
whatever. I
yes,
can do my yoga. And those that 3 hours have become so precious for me now. So
right,
Corona time, I just didn't really feel the heat. I was already teaching online
yeah,
before Corona also. So the medium was different, but yes, I mean, it has also changed the way we are looking at our houses. It has also changed the way even clients, our students who interact with
right,
us, they
right.
look at us. Earlier, it was like घर से practice करते हैं. But it's no more like this. Even corporates are doing that. I
Yes,
know a lot of friends who do 2 days work from home, and then they
right,
only. And I think that is also changing the way we are looking at our built environment. We want more
yes,
cozy, more cleaner spaces for ourselves, more comfortable
yes,
space to work for long hours, for that
yes,
matter. I'm sitting
yes,
in a very nice place, but I have to use the background for the
yeah.
research. And I see your background also looks very good. That brings me to the last question, and it is very simple. And I know we have exceeded time, but I hope I'm doing justice to this interaction, and I hope you will also catch up with your other appointments and not get delayed. My last question is a message to younger generation. It's a very simple question, but it is in two parts. Especially first part is because the profession is not so well known, and many people do not even realize what we can bring to the table or to the built environment. How can we make it a better place? So what it is to be in the profession of architecture, so your message to them, so that more students or young people join architecture. And the second message is also to the younger generation, what little things they should keep in mind in order to bring a change in the gender, skewedness in the profession, or I call it engendering the profession. Little behavioral changes which youth can bring in, so that in future more women and girls are comfortable taking up this profession. And over to you.
Yeah. So, I would like to, if I have to leave a message for young designers,
Mhm.
I would borrow the words of another designer, John Carey, and he
Yes.
has put it really well when he has
Mhm.
said, dignity is to design,
Mm.
what health is to medicine,
Mm.
and justice is to law,
Law. Mm.
right? So, when you're design, let the focus of your design be dignity. And
Mhm.
if you look at it like that, if you look at dignity, you will be building spaces which help
Mhm.
person lead their best lives,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And would help everybody, all persons to thrive, all living things
Yes.
to thrive, right? Because you're looking at dignity. And again, about engendering, that's also pretty simple if you look at it from this
Mm.
perspective. Because if you connect with each other over dignity and over humanity,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
you know, other things, other intersectionalities, other
Yes.
marginalizations fall back because you're
Yes.
connecting over your shared humanity, right?
Yes.
So I think that would be the way That would be my dream for the
Yes,
younger generation.
wonderfully put. Very short and sweet message for the younger generation, and the one word they can catch, take from you. Thank you so much. I think that brings an end to my questions to you. And this is also a time, if you have any questions for me, I'm willing to take it up or take them up.
Yeah. No, like I said right at the beginning, it's a lovely experience to be a part of this and to
Thank
give
you.
insights into, I'm glad you're doing this because to give insights into what women have been up to, you know,
Yes,
in the
that's the whole
profession.
idea.
Yeah,
That's the whole
is
idea.
yes, is something really nice, and I'm sure a lot of persons will appreciate that. The only thing that I'm left with in the end is that this is a shift that's happened for me also very recently.
Hmm. Hmm.
I do not see gender as binary anymore.
Very
You know,
good. Me
so
neither, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah. So that I was wondering if that could be something that can be woven into further
Mhm.
talks with young persons as you go ahead.
Yeah,
Rather than
absolutely.
that,
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I
yeah,
have to keep this in mind as well. But as I mentioned in a very simple class, school time, an analogy to reach out to get the 100
yeah,
marks, I have to work towards it so that we can
yeah,
reach somewhere 50-50, you know.
yeah, sure,
So
yeah.
not that we wish to get 100 marks out of it. So thank you so much, Parul, Kumtha. It's really an enlightening interaction with you. May you remain an inspiration to others, and now you have also another fan following in me. I'm grateful to have learned about your endeavors. I do hope that you are going to keep us posted with your wonderful work which you are doing. And if there is anything we can work together, we should definitely explore. I wish you best for you to continue your endeavors, and especially knowing that you are following your, passion, and how beautifully you have interwoven it with your profession. We shall continue with our conversation on women in architecture in this platform. So do stay tuned through our social media platforms. And thank you so much once again. Please take care of yourself, Parul. And we talk outside this session sometime. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mansi. Thank you, Mansi.